Ferrari always redefines the limits of the possible. The SF90 Spider is the perfect embodiment of this spirit. It merges engineering and innovation and fascinating beauty. Every single detail is aimed at achieving outstanding performance goals, and at the same time, those very same aspects allowed us to create a futuristic and iconic sculpture where form and function are perfectly integrated.
What goes into the making of a Ferrari? Flavio Menzoni, Chief Design Officer of Ferrari, is one of the main people behind the magic of designing these unique and highly prized cars. What goes into the design? How are these valuable cars assembled? And finally, how does one become an owner? I ponder these questions as it's a dream of mine to one day own one of these beautiful cars. The initial ideas for their models start at an Italian company called Pininfarina, which has had a relationship with the Ferrari company dating back to 1952. Here, they provide sketches and ideas for different models of Ferraris. So many things must be considered when contemplating the design: speed, maneuverability, weight, materials, and most of all, beauty. Ferraris are gorgeous and sleek cars. It is very hard to find information about how Ferrari actually designs these cars, as they are very secretive about the process, for good reason. Competitors would absolutely love to steal the designs if they could. After the sketches are finalized, the design team moves on to the clay modeling process. Scaled and full-scale models are created with great care and deliberation. Maranello, Italy is where all the real magic happens. This is home to the original Ferrari factory. According to an article by Wired, the factory produces about 8,400 cars a year and employs 1,300 workers. Every Ferrari on average takes around 3 to 7 months to complete. The first stage is the casting of the engine, which takes place in the in-house foundry inside the Maranello factory. Once the engine is complete, robots take over temporarily. 2 robots go on to connect the Ferrari's valve mechanics. This is the only process that is not completed by hand. I thought it was pretty funny that the chief manufacturing officer, Vincenzo Regazzoni, is quoted saying, "The robots work so closely together that we call them Romeo and Juliet." After this process is done, technicians along the 21,000 square meter Maranello line attach all the mechanical parts in the Ferrari before adding bumpers, wheels, and windscreens. At the end of the line, all the interiors are installed and the engine is tested. In the assembly line, there are 2 main engines the Ferrari likes to use. The most standard is the V8 engine, with the other larger engine being the V12. V12s are more complex and harder to assemble, so they are separated from the V8s and have their own line. Next, they move on to the car frame. Each car is held by steel hooks from a mechanical lift. This is used to give the mobility to the chassis to be able to rotate and move between stations, along with adjusting the height to be able to work on different parts. Then, the doors are assembled in a nearby factory in Modena, Enzo Ferrari's hometown. They are then attached to the Ferrari at the end of the assembly line. After that, the engine, transmission, and suspension systems are mounted on the Ferrari's underbody. The 2 robots, Romeo and Juliet, will then fuse valve seats that go into the engines, as it's a job that's way too hard for the human hand. Romeo's job is to pick up cylinder heads and warm them with compressed air, while Juliet dips aluminum rings into liquid nitrogen. All the parts are then joined together and the Ferrari is finished. When building a new Ferrari, it is often designed for a specific client in mind. The wait for a Ferrari can be as long as 5 years. The client can visit a local showroom to choose a car, but if they participate in Ferrari's tailor-made program, the client is invited to Maranello to hand-pick materials, colors, and finishes. Once a client has paid 20% of the total price, production will begin. When finished, the car is shipped very carefully and sometimes travels via air to the customer. When the Ferrari is in your hands, you are not allowed to tamper with the engine, paint the car crazy colors, or cover the Ferrari badge. My grandpa visited the factory in Maranello when he was a teenager and actually was able to meet Mr. Ferrari himself. I visited the showroom in Marin on my birthday this year and hope to own a Ferrari myself one day. My favorite model is the 458 Italia.